Welcome to Darkverse. I'm Isaac Nightshade, and tonight you're not just tuning into a game show. You're stepping onto a stage that's seen too many smiles and far too many secrets. For decades, The Price Is Right promised fortune, fun, and fanfare. But behind the bright lights and perfect bids lies something far darker. Lost tapes, missing contestants, haunted props, and a wheel that never truly stops spinning. In this special series, we reveal the 11 cursed tales they never aired. Stories buried behind door number 3, whispered through broken microphones, and etched into the dressing room mirrors. These aren't games, they're rituals. And every contestant had one thing in common. They never made it out. So take a seat, hold your bid, and pray they don't call your name. Because on The Price Is Fright, the price is eternal. There are few things in life as pure as watching someone spin the big wheel on The Price Is Right. The way their hands tremble, the burst of joy, the hope. But hope can be a dangerous thing. This story begins in 1994 with a woman named Marilyn Collins, a retired school teacher from Akron, Ohio, who finally got her lifelong wish to appear on her favorite game show. She was 64, vibrant, sharp as ever, and had sent in hundreds of letters over the years. When she got the call that she'd been selected, she cried. She told her bridge club, her grandchildren, even the mailman, she was going to come on down. Her appearance aired on a Monday afternoon. She wore a bright yellow shirt with her name handwritten in black marker, just like the others. When they called her down, she shrieked and skipped to the podium. She was a natural. She won her pricing round, aced the punch-a-bunch game, and made it to the wheel. That's when things changed. The studio lights flickered once. No one thought anything of it. Marilyn stepped up to the wheel. The audience clapped. The music played. She grinned, grabbed as for the Yuri bars and pulled. It spun, slow at first, then fast. It made that familiar clicking sound like a toy machine gun. Click, 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 click. Then the lights dimmed again. The music warped just for a moment. The wheel didn't stop. It spun and spun. A full minute, then 2, as the audience's clapping fell into uneasy silence. Marilyn stood back, her smile faltering. Drew Carey hadn't taken over yet. This was Bob Barker's era. Bob blinked a few times, confused. He whispered to a stage hand. Still, the wheel spun. Finally, it slowed. The click-clicks turned sluggish, irregular. The pointer landed on $1. The crowd erupted. Bob smiled, relieved, and announced the bonus spin. Marilyn didn't smile back. Her eyes were fixed on the wheel. Even as she stepped forward to spin again, her gaze never left it. And when she touched it the second time, something touched back. That was the last anyone saw of her. The real Marilyn. The rest of the episode aired. Normally, she won a set of patio furniture and $5,000 in cash. She waved to the crowd. She smiled, but behind her eyes, something was gone. The studio staff said she was polite, but oddly quiet during the rest of the day. She left without taking photos, didn't collect her prizes, didn't even cash the check. 2 weeks later, her daughter reported her missing. The police entered Marilyn's house on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Everything was untouched. The bed made, fridge stocked, mailbox full. But in the living room, they found something strange. The entire wall had been cleared, and in its place was a large handmade wheel. It looked just like the one from the show, painted in precise detail, down to the numbers, the pegs, even the spinner. But it wasn't plastic and steel, it was wood and bone. Some of the numbers were carved into what looked like animal horn, others into bits of ivory or fingernail. One square, the $1 slot, was darker than the rest. Wet, still spinning. How come the police thought it was the work of a disturbed mind? They assumed Marilyn had some kind of breakdown, that she'd built it in mania and run off. But her family swore she was never like this. She was sharp, healthy, proud. And then the phone call started. First from the Bridge Club. One woman said she heard clicking sounds on her answering machine, like a wheel spinning. Another said she saw Marilyn in her kitchen window, even though Marilyn's house had been locked up for weeks. The real horror didn't begin until the studio received a package. It came in a brown box with no return address. Inside was a VHS tape labeled Spin Again. The producer, curious, popped it into the old player in his office. Static, then a black screen, then Marilyn, standing in a dimly lit room. The same room with the wheel the police found. She was smiling, her voice calm, soft, teacher-like. You spin, you win. You spin, you stay. The wheel knows. The wheel chooses. Behind her, the homemade wheel spun on its own, faster and faster. The clicking became unbearable. The camera zoomed in until the entire screen was just motion and noise. And then, it stopped. The screen went black. The VHS player sparked, and the producer's heart stopped. He died on the spot. After that, the studio tried to suppress the tape, burn it. But every few months, a copy appeared in someone's mailbox. A new one. No postmark, no tracking. Contestants from Marilyn's episode began to report visions. One saw her reflection behind him in the bathroom mirror. Another said his TV turned on by itself every night at midnight, playing a rerun of her episode. Only this time, her face was blank. A third was found in his garage, whispering numbers over and over while spinning a broken bicycle wheel. Each one died within a year. In 1998, the studio decided to remove the original wheel from the set, just to be safe. They built a new one, bigger, shinier. They buried the old one in a prop warehouse in Van Nuys. That's when the technicians started disappearing. Security footage showed the wheel, in its storage container, spinning on its own, even locked, even boxed. Sometimes if you played the footage in reverse, you could hear Marilyn's voice whispering, "Higher, lower, you've already lost." Eventually, they sealed the warehouse and declared it off limits. The wheel remains there to this day. But the story doesn't end there. In 2007, on the night before Bob Barker's final taping, a janitor working the late shift said he heard something strange echoing down the empty studio hall. Click, click, click. He followed the sound, past the set, past the dressing rooms, all the way to the stage. And there it was, the new wheel, spinning, no lights, no power, no one around. Standing beside it, watching, was a woman in a yellow shirt, with her name in black marker, Marilyn. She turned slowly toward him, smiled, and whispered, "One more spin." The janitor quit that night, never returned. The story made it around the crew, mostly as a joke. But when The Price Is Right moved to its digital format, the original wheel was quietly retired, never explained, never addressed. But fans noticed. One YouTuber did a breakdown of the last few episodes using the old wheel. He slowed down the footage, frame by frame. In the moment before the bonus spin, just as the wheel starts to turn, you can see her, standing in the reflection of the center mirror. A flicker, a smirk, a shadow with no source, still waiting, still spinning. So, if you ever find yourself on a game show stage, gripping the side of a colorful wheel, ready to spin for glory, remember Marilyn, because some wheels never stop turning, and some prizes you don't want to win. Story 2, Plinko from Below. Some game show moments become legendary. A perfect spin, a massive win, a miraculous comeback. But some moments are quietly scrubbed from history, tapes lost, records vanished, and contestants never spoken of again. This is the story of Frankie Delgado, a fast-talking car salesman from Modesto, California, who made it onto The Price Is Right in 2003. He wasn't your typical contestant. Loud, yes. Charismatic, sure. But what set Frankie apart was his obsession with one game, Plinko. He wasn't just a fan. He was possessed by the game. He had a tattoo of the Plinko board on his right arm, He had built a replica in his garage, full scale, pegs and all. He even held neighborhood tournaments with handmade chips. Frankie had a theory. He believed that Plinko wasn't just a game of chance. He was convinced there was a pattern, a secret rhythm to the board, one that, if mastered, would let him control the outcome. He called it Plinko Flow. He'd spent years mapping the peg layouts, timing drops, calculating bounce angles. He ran simulations, hundreds, thousands. He even started muttering probabilities in his sleep. When he got picked to be a contestant, he wept, not from joy, but from vindication. The day of the taping was uneventful until his name was called. Frankie Delgado, come on down. He bolted to the podium like a man possessed. His shirt read, Plinko for life, in black duct tape. When he won his round and was told he'd be playing Plinko, he collapsed to his knees in front of Bob Barker. The crowd loved it. They thought it was a bit. Bob chuckled, but behind Frankie's wide smile was something wild, unsettled. Backstage crew later said he whispered to the chip before placing it, "It's time. Let them see." He dropped the first chip. Click, click, click. The chip bounced with the usual randomness until it hit peg 13. Then something strange happened. It didn't bounce. It froze mid-air for half a second, then shot left at an impossible angle, landing on $10,000. The crowd went wild. Second chip. Same thing. Bounce. Freeze. Snap to the left. Another $10,000. A murmur moved through the audience. Some clapped slower. Some stopped. Bob looked confused. Frankie's grin widened. His hands were shaking. Sweat dripped from his brow. Third chip. Bounce. Pause. Flicker. Like a glitch in reality. And another $10,000. By the fourth chip, the lights began to dim, ever so slightly. The music glitched. The stage crew swore. The air turned cold. Frankie turned to the crowd. "You see? It works. I cracked it. The flow is real." He dropped the fourth chip. It didn't land on a number. It vanished halfway down the board, like it sank into the wood. The game stopped. A producer ran on stage. Bob stepped back. Then the board began to bleed. Dark, thick liquid oozed from behind the pegs, trailing down the clear plastic. It wasn't a malfunction. It smelled like copper and rot. Frankie dropped to his knees, hands raised. "The sacrifice has been accepted," he whispered. Then the floor beneath the Plinko board split open. Not like a trap door, no mechanism. It cracked like splitting stone. A deep crevice opened beneath it, revealing what looked like ancient stone stairs spiraling down into blackness. The audience screamed. The cameras cut. Frankie stood up, turned to Bob Barker and said, "I'll go first," and he stepped inside. The episode never aired. CBS issued a statement saying technical difficulties caused a cancellation. But those who were there, the audience members, the camera crew, the interns, they never forgot, and none of them ever agreed on what they saw. Some said Frankie descended the steps and vanished. Others claimed he walked into the crevice and the darkness pulled him in like liquid. One person swore the bleeding Plinko board whispered, "Price must be paid," before the crack sealed itself shut. The board was removed from the stage that same night, replaced within 24 hours. CBS denied the incident ever occurred. Anyone who spoke about it publicly was let go. But then, the letters started arriving, handwritten, shaky, postmarked from a town in Arizona that hadn't existed since the 1800s, each one signed by Frankie Delgado. "The board is older than you think," one read. "It was never built, it was found. The pegs aren't random, they are markers. They represent something alive." The letters grew darker. "I see them when I sleep. Pegs that breathe, chips made of bone. There is no winning, only descent." In 2012, a crew member working on set maintenance after hours went missing. His name was Kenny. No criminal history, no reason to run. The next morning, his toolbox was found at the base of the Plinko stairs. Next to it, one chip, covered in blood, and a sticky note. He didn't believe, but the board doesn't care. The price is right. As of this year, the current Plinko board has been rebuilt. Again, from scratch. Different material. New. Configuration. But strange things still happen. One contestant in 2021 dropped a chip and fainted immediately. When revived, she repeated the same phrase over and over. It knew my number. It knew my price. Another claimed the pegs whispered his mother's voice as the chip descended. And in the depths of the CBS archives, buried under security clearance, is a footage reel from 2003, untitled. The label, Plinko from below, 03, do not copy. They say if you watch it alone, with the lights off, the video glitches just as Frankie drops that last chip. And for a split second before the crack opens, you can see eyes in the board. Watching, waiting. So next time you cheer for someone dropping a chip on the show, ask yourself, what are they really offering and who is playing with who? Because on The Price is Fright, the chips fall where the darkness wants them to. Story 3, Come On Down and Stay Forever. Where the audience had already been seated, the cue cards were ready, the camera rolled across the smooth linoleum floor. It was supposed to be a regular taping of The Price is Right, but that afternoon in 1987 would be anything but regular. It started, as it always did, with a burst of music and applause. Bob Barker flashing that signature grin. The announcer's voice echoed across the studio. It's time to play. The Price is Right. Our first contestant is Nancy Bellevue. Come on down. From the third row, seat 22, a woman stood up slowly. No cheering, no jumping. Just silence around her, as if the people beside her had forgotten how to clap. She wore a pale blue dress, hair tied up tightly. Her name tag wasn't printed. It was handwritten in faded ink. She walked slowly down the aisle, like a bride in a trance. Her eyes didn't scan the crowd. She never looked at Bob. She just stared ahead. The producers assumed she was nervous, maybe overwhelmed. But there was one small problem. There was no Nancy Bellevue on the contestant list. The control booth radioed the stage manager in a panic. Who the hell is Nancy Bellevue? She's not on the card. Check her ID. Cut to commercial if needed. But the game went on. Nancy stood quietly at the podium. Bob smiled. Nancy, tell us a little about yourself. She blinked. Her voice was flat. I work in records, downtown. I like catalogs, filing things. The crowd chuckled politely. Bob moved on. She lost the opening bid, barely, spoke during the showcase item, and didn't win anything. The camera panned past her. That should have been the end of her appearance. But Nancy didn't leave. After losing her round, she didn't return to the audience. She just stood there. A crew member approached her and asked if she'd like to take a seat backstage. She nodded, followed him down the hallway, and then vanished. Vanished. In front of cameras. In front of people. The tape glitched. A single flicker of static. And she was gone. The assistant swore she'd been right behind him. She'd turned the corner. He followed. Gone. He said the air got colder. The walls narrowed. The hallway had stretched like it wasn't built by human hands. And in the silence, he heard it. Faint and rhythmic. Click, click, click. Security searched the building. She wasn't found in the green room, not in the dressing rooms, not in the lot. No ID, no phone, no name tag. And when they reviewed the audience footage from earlier, something even more chilling appeared. Nancy wasn't in seat 22. She wasn't anywhere in the crowd before her name was called. She had never been in the audience. The production team buried the incident, cut the segment, retaped the episode with new contestants. But things kept happening. 3 weeks later, during a game of hole-in-one, a contestant froze mid-sentence and started mumbling, "She's still here, in the lights, in the walls, filing the wrong souls." Another time, a microphone picked up a whisper during a commercial break. "Come on down, come on down, come on down forever." A researcher in the CBS archives pulled the contestant logs from the 80s looking for answers. He found something strange in the records for October 12, 1961. From the original black and white version of the show, before it moved to its current format, there was a contestant listed under that exact name, Nancy Bellevue. She had made it to the final showcase, won a washing machine and a trip to Reno, but 2 days later she was found dead in her apartment, alone. Cause of death, cardiac arrest, age 29. Her neighbors reported hearing TV game show music playing from her unit all night long. The researcher, horrified, dug further. He tracked down a black and white still from that episode. It showed Nancy. Same dress, same pale smile, same gaze. It was her, exactly as she'd appeared in 1987, 26 years after her death. After that, sightings increased. Stagehands started reporting seeing her shadow in monitor reflections. Contestants would mention the quiet woman in blue who offered them bidding advice. And once, when a camera lens shattered during setup, the tech who was holding it swore he saw her standing behind Bob's podium. Head tilted, mouth moving, but no sound. They eventually began calling her the Repeat. One night, a new announcer, a fill-in for Rod Roddy, was practicing lines in the empty studio. It was close to midnight. He leaned into the mic and jokingly called out, "Nancy Bellevue, come on down." The lights flickered, the stage screens blinked, and the big wheel, untouched, unplugged, began to spin, slowly, groaning, then faster. From the darkened audience seats, a figure stood up. Not walked, rose, effortlessly, like floating. She drifted down the aisle. The announcer screamed. By the time others arrived, there was no one on the floor, just the spinning wheel and a note taped to the podium. "I'm still here, I never left. Someone has to keep the catalog." In the years since, contestants have gone missing. Only one or two, enough to write off as coincidence. But every time the footage shows the same glitch. A flicker, a woman in blue, a whisper on the mic, "Come on down," and the audience always claps. CBS has denied all claims of paranormal events, but longtime fans will notice something subtle. The podiums on each stage are now bolted in place. No contestant is allowed to wander unescorted. In seat 22, row 3, permanently marked as out of order. So next time you're watching The Price Is Right and someone calmly walks down the aisle in silence, look closely, look at their eyes. Look for a name tag that seems faded. And if the name is Nancy Bellevue, don't cheer, don't blink, and whatever you do, don't follow her backstage. To Story 4, The Showcase of Shadows. Every game show has its grand finale. For The Price Is Right, it's the Showcase Showdown. The moment contestants step forward, hearts pounding, eyes glittering with the hope of winning a new car, a vacation, or a house full of gleaming prizes. But for Jeremy Polk, the showcase was not a dream come true. It was a delivery from somewhere else. Jeremy was a freelance writer from Baton Rouge. He wasn't particularly lucky, or even that, enthusiastic to be on the show. His girlfriend had dragged him to a taping during a trip to Los Angeles in 2014. He didn't wear a bright shirt. He didn't cheer much. But somehow, they called his name. "Jeremy Polk, come on down." And for a moment, he lit up, ran down, took his spot. He stumbled through the first game, overbid once, underbid twice, until somehow, miraculously, he landed a seat at the Showcase Showdown. He spun a lucky 95 cents. The other contestant went over. That's when things got strange. Bob Barker had long since retired. Drew Carey hosted the episode, joking, smiling, doing his thing. The two showcases were presented as usual. One featured a spa day, a hot tub, and a European cruise. The other, a little more bizarre. Your showcase begins with an antique grandfather clock that seems to never tick quite the same way twice. Next, it's a collection of vintage dolls from around the world, each one hand-painted and staring just a little too hard. And finally, you'll never forget the ride in your brand-new hearse. That's right, a fully restored 1967 Cadillac hearse straight from a funeral home in Salem, Massachusetts. The audience chuckled, nervous laughter. Jeremy raised an eyebrow. Is this real? Drew smiled. It's yours if the price is right. Jeremy, slightly creeped out, decided to pass. He bid on the more normal showcase. The other contestant, a woman named Alyssa, laughed, said she loved creepy stuff, and locked in. Her bid on the odd one. But when the time came to reveal the prices, something glitched. The showcase Jeremy bid on was revealed to be valued at $24,412. His bid was $25,000. Over. Alyssa's bid, $21,000. Actual value, $666. The screen glitched, flickered, then readjusted to $22,300. Drew stammered, confused. And Alyssa, you've won? But Alyssa was gone. Gone. Right there on live TV. The camera jerked wildly. A producer stepped in front of the lens. The credits rolled. Abruptly. That episode was never aired, never rerun. But someone online caught a bootleg version. It lived on the deep web for years, until it vanished mysteriously from every server. And Jeremy? Well, he got a call 3 weeks later from a blocked number. Congratulations, Mr. Polk. We're sending your showcase package. He tried to explain he didn't win. They said the decision had been reversed. We're still delivering the prizes. Please be home this week. Then they hung up. The next day, a delivery truck pulled up outside his apartment. No logos, no driver, just idling at the curb. Inside the truck, the grandfather clock. The movers, both silent men with pale faces and white gloves, placed it inside his living room, then left. Jeremy stood by it for an hour waiting for it to chime. It didn't. The hands twitched slightly, then froze. That night, it ticked only once. At 3 a.m., a long, wet, organic tick, like something crawling inside the wood. 3 nights later, the second delivery arrived. This time, a crate of porcelain dolls. They were horrifying. Cracked faces, yellowed lace dresses. Each doll had a name etched into a gold tag. Names that Jeremy later discovered matched missing children from across the country. The dolls didn't stay in place. Every morning, one would appear somewhere else in his apartment, perched on the kitchen counter by his bedside, inside the fridge. He tried locking them in a closet. One broke the door from the inside. And then came the hearse, not delivered by truck. It arrived driven. Jeremy was woken up at 2:11 a.m. by the sound of an engine idling outside. He looked out. The black hearse sat in his driveway. Driver's door open. No one in sight. Its interior lights were on, faintly glowing. Inside sat a box wrapped in red ribbon. Jeremy, trembling, stepped outside. He opened the hearse. Inside the box, a single VHS tape. Label, Final Ride, Polk. Against all reason, he played it. It showed footage of a funeral. His funeral. A closed casket. His face on a poster. People crying. His girlfriend and sobbing. Then the footage cut to a ride in the hearse. Camera mounted on the dashboard. Empty roads. Streetlights flickering. The timestamp read, tomorrow. 3:33 a.m. Jeremy didn't sleep that night. He called friends. No one answered. He tried leaving the house, but the locks had changed. He tried smashing the grandfather clock. It bled. At 3:30, the dolls were all seated in front of the TV, watching static. At 3:33, the hearse engine started. Alone, unmanned, it revved, and the doorbell rang. When police arrived 2 days later, the apartment was cold. Too cold, no power, no lights. But the showcase items were still there. The clock, the dolls, the hearse parked outside. No sign of Jeremy. But on the kitchen table, they found a receipt. Showcase package delivered. Payment received. Signed in black ink. Host unknown. Saptakura Yi won. To this day, no one knows who really won that showcase showdown, or what happened to Alyssa. Some say they're still riding that hearse together, delivering twisted prizes to the next cursed winner. Some say Jeremy never left his apartment and is just another porcelain face staring back from the doll collection. So if you ever find yourself in the showcase round and you're offered something odd, something too weird to be real, don't just laugh, because some prizes aren't just for show. Some prizes come to collect. Story 5, Yodel to the Abyss. Some games on the Price Is Right are remembered for their simplicity, but one has always stood out. Part skill, part luck, and completely unforgettable. Cliffhangers, you know the one. A little alpine climber ascends a cardboard mountain, yodeling his way up as the contestant guesses the price of household items. If you're right, he pauses. If you're wrong, he climbs. 2. Wrong. And he plummets. It's adorable. Unless you've heard what happened in 1991, when a contestant named Alan Groves played the game and lost something more than just a prize. Alan wasn't like other contestants. A 40-year-old librarian from Spokane, he was known for being quiet, precise, and almost pathologically obsessed with trivia. His co-workers joked he didn't talk much unless you asked him about the Price Is Right. Then he wouldn't shut up. He knew every game, every prize, every mistake contestants had ever made. But cliffhangers, that was his favorite. He watched reruns of it for hours, studied patterns, memorized retail prices of blenders, toasters, shoe polish kits, down to the penny. He believed he was destined to play it, not just win it, perfect it. So when he finally got picked for the show, he wasn't excited. He was ready. He aced the first round, won the mini game, made it to the cliffhanger stage. Bob Barker beamed. "Alan, you know how this works?" Alan nodded. "I've waited my whole life for this." The crowd chuckled. The yodeling music began. The first item, an electric toothbrush. Alan guessed $23. Correct price, $24. Yodeler climbs, 1 step. Second item, hand mixer. He squinted. $33. Correct price, $31. Climber moves, 2 more steps. The audience clapped. Bob smiled. Then came the third item, a small globe lamp, brass base, felt bottom. Alan stared, then whispered, "This wasn't in the catalog." Bob tilted, his head. "What's your guess, Alan?" Alan looked at the model beside the lamp. She didn't smile. She didn't blink. He said, $39, $99. The crowd held their breath. The climber moved, 1 step, 2, 3, 10, 15. Yodeling faster, louder, 20 steps. Bob shouted, "Whoa, hold on!" 25, 28. The music distorted. The cardboard mountain began to smoke. 30. The little yodeling man reached the top, turned, and waved. Then he stepped off the edge and screamed. The scream wasn't from the machine. It was human. The lights cut out. The audience gasped. One woman fainted. On stage, the cardboard mountain split open, revealing a dark hole where the puppet had fallen. Alan didn't move. He stood there trembling, whispering over and over. He knew I would fail. He knew I didn't know the lamp. The show cut to commercial. That episode was never broadcast. They said Alan had a breakdown. Security escorted him out. But backstage, crew said he kept reaching for the prop table, whispering, I have to follow him. The producers replaced the mountain, claimed it was a one-off malfunction, but strange things started happening. The game was only played 4 more times that season. Each time the yodeling music glitched. The puppet moved too fast. Once it stopped halfway and turned to face the contestant. The audience thought it was an animatronic joke, but the contestant, a woman named Denise, fainted. When she woke up, she screamed, "He was watching me from inside." In 1993, a stagehand died in a storage accident, crushed by a shelving unit. Inside the wreckage, they found the original Cliffhanger's mountain, shattered, with deep claw marks inside the cardboard. And behind it, something worse. A tiny door, no taller than 2 feet, painted alpine blue, with a handle that bled when touched. No one could explain why it was there. Alan Groves, the contestant, Alan Groves, the honoree, disappeared that year, quit his job, left no forwarding address. But one day in 1994, a package arrived at CBS Studios. No return label, no stamp. Inside, a VHS tape labeled "Yodel to the Abyss." A note, "He never stopped falling." The tape showed Alan, gaunt, eyes sunken, sitting in a dim room. Behind him, the original climber figure. Its face had changed. No longer a smile, just a long, open mouth, screaming. The camera shook as the yodeling music began to play again, over and over. Each time faster, each time louder, until it was just shrieking static. CBS shelved the game for 2 years. When it returned, the climber looked slightly different. No mustache, no wave, just blank. They never explained why. In 2019, a YouTuber known for deep dive game show exposés tried to track down Alan's last known address. He found a listing in a remote Washington town. The house was abandoned, boarded up, but inside every wall was covered in miniature shelves. Each shelf held a hand-carved version of the climber. Some burned, some crushed, some twisted into grotesque shapes. Hundreds of them, all pointed toward the same corner of the room, where a single phrase was etched in deep gouges. "You never guessed the last item right." To this day, Cliffhangers is still played. The rules haven't changed. The music remains cheerful, but longtime crew members watch closely, because sometimes the climber pauses at the top. Sometimes he turns. And sometimes, if you play the audio backwards, you can hear something beneath the yodeling. A low, ragged whisper. He's still falling. So the next time you're watching someone guess the price of a toothbrush and a teapot, listen closely. Watch the climber. Because if he stops, if he turns, it's not the item you got wrong. It's the game that decided you didn't belong. Story 6. Bob's last episode. On June 15, 2007, the world said goodbye to a television icon. Bob Barker hosted his last official episode of The Price Is Right after 35 years. There were flowers, standing ovations, smiles, tears, and decades of memories wrapped in applause. But what most people don't know is that Bob didn't actually film his final episode that morning. The real last episode was taped the night before. It was never broadcast. It was never listed in the official logs. Only a handful of crew were there, and none of them work in television anymore. 2 of them never spoke again. 1 disappeared. This is the story of Bob's last episode, the one no one wants to talk about. The setup was simple. A dry run, they called it. Just a rehearsal. One last walk through the motions before the big goodbye. Bob agreed reluctantly. It was late, nearly 11 p.m. The studio was cold, empty, but a few die-hard crew members had stayed behind. One of them was Marla Jensen, a production assistant with over a decade on the show. She said Bob was in good spirits, nostalgic but calm. The lights came on. The stage glowed one more time. The cameras were activated, but the red recording light never blinked. At least, not until they called the first name. Our first contestant is Daniel Clay. Come on down. Everyone froze. There was no audience, no microphone, no announcer, just a voice, deep, cracked, like it had been pulled from a dusty reel. The studio doors creaked open behind them, and a man walked in, Daniel Clay, not on the call sheet, not on the lot. No ID. He looked wrong. His face was slack, but not with nerves, with emptiness. His eyes were too pale, his hands too still. He walked down the aisle to silence. Bob smiled politely. Welcome, Daniel. Daniel didn't speak, just nodded. The next name was called Elaine Morgan. Come on down. The lights dimmed slightly. Another figure stepped in from the shadows. An older woman, no shoes, dressed in a contestant shirt from the 1970s. Faded and torn. The fabric read Elaine in glitter marker. She shuffled down the aisle, teeth gritted, whispering something no one could hear. A third name was called, then a fourth. By the time all four podiums were filled, the air had grown heavy, thick, almost wet. Marla later described it like trying to breathe inside a dream. Bob looked uncomfortable. He wiped his brow. All right, let's get started. The prize, a toaster oven. The bidding began. Daniel said, $1. Elaine said, 35 souls. Bob paused. I'm sorry? Elaine smiled. $35. The crowd, the non-existent crowd, erupted in recorded applause. Only, it wasn't recorded. The sound system had been shut off. The applause came from nowhere, and yet it echoed through the studio like waves crashing in a canyon. Bob tried to keep going, tried to laugh it off. He moved to the game portion. It was a simple pricing game. The props were already set up. A miniature set with a prize wheel and 3 boxes. But when Daniel opened the first box, the lights shattered above it. Glass rained down. Inside the box, a VHS tape, burned, melted to the inside walls. Daniel picked it up and began to weep. Dry, hollow sobs. Bob stopped the show. He turned to Marla off camera and whispered, "This isn't a rehearsal. What is this?" And then the cameras turned on by themselves. Recording lights blinked. A red on-air warning flared on the ceiling. The studio screens powered up, on their own, displaying a loop of Bob's past episodes, but each one was wrong. His hair changed rapidly. The contestants aged backward. Some of them stared directly at the camera, mouthing numbers. Marla tried pulling the plug on the power grid. Nothing worked. Bob's voice played from the speakers. Not his voice, but a twisted recording. Spay or neuter your regrets. Come on down. You never left. You never left. You never... Then silence. When the lights went black. When they came back on, all 4 contestants were standing behind Bob. Close. Too close. Each one holding a prop from the past. A toy car, a cash register, a faded name tag, and a black envelope. Bob asked, "What is this?" Elaine opened the envelope. Inside, a photo of Bob, dead, in the same suit he wore that night. Bob didn't speak for a long time after that. Then, without prompting, he turned to the camera, gave his signature smile and said, "I'm Bob Barker, and this has been The Price Is Right." He walked off set. Never looked back. The footage, Marla said, remained in the camera, but when the crew reviewed the tapes the next morning, they were blank, erased, except for one segment, 2 seconds, no audio, a single frame, the 4 contestants standing in an empty studio, with no Bob, just the host's mic dropped on the stage, still swaying. Bob retired the next day. He never spoke of the rehearsal, never mentioned Daniel, Elaine, or the others. But Marla swore something changed in him after that night. He never watched a single taping after he left. He refused to talk about the show. He kept his house dark, kept his bedroom locked, and when he passed away in 2023, his will contained one very specific request. No game show music, no cameras, and whatever you do, don't air my last episode. But stories have a way of slipping out. A studio janitor once claimed he found a real canister labeled Barker Last Take Alt hidden behind a wall panel. He said he opened it, and the smell of old flowers and rot poured out. The film inside melted, burned, but etched into the metal reel was a single word: stay. Some say if you play any of Bob's old episodes backwards, you can hear things buried in the applause. Numbers, names, whispers. One fan swears that during a rerun in 2020, Bob looked directly into the camera and mouthed, "Don't watch," even though his mouth never moved in the original episode. So if you ever find yourself watching The Price Is Right late at night and the announcer calls for a contestant you've never heard of, turn it off. Right then, because it may not be a rerun, it may be that lost episode, and Bob, he may still be waiting. Story 7, The Audience That Never Leaves. In 2016, a young production intern named Lyle Ferguson started working the late shift. His job was simple: take inventory, organize props, and clean up the set once the day's taping ended. He liked the quiet, the silence of the emptied studio, until the third night. That night, as he swept the aisles of the audience section, he heard clapping, polite, rhythmic, coming from the far right corner of the bleachers, Section D, rows 6 through 10. He looked up. The seats were empty. The clapping stopped the moment he turned his head. He laughed it off, figured it was his imagination, until the next night, when it happened again. This time it was accompanied by something worse. Breathing, not his own. Short, shallow, and right behind him. He spun. No one there. But all the chairs in Section D were rocking gently, as if people had just stood up. He reported it to his supervisor. She rolled her eyes. Section D's always been like that. Ignore it. Why? Because they don't like being acknowledged. That was the only answer she gave. As Lyle began researching, he combed old CBS archives, online message boards, behind-the-scenes blogs, and he found a strange pattern. Across decades of show tapings, wide shots of the studio never captured Section D clearly. The camera always panned past it or glitched. In one episode from 1989, a burst of static distorted that entire corner. Just for a second. When paused, it revealed something sitting in those seats. Not someone, something. He dug deeper, sharpened him. 1975, a fire broke out on set during an off-air segment. No one ever spoke of it publicly, but one buried police report mentioned 3 audience members were unaccounted for. Flash fire, smoke inhalation, no remains recovered. They were sitting in, you guessed it, Section D. After that day, the seats were rebuilt, but not replaced. The scorched wood under the cushions was painted over, not removed. Lyle returned to the studio the next night. This time, he brought a camera. He waited until 2:33 a.m., the time he'd noted the clapping had occurred the last 2 nights. He sat in the center aisle, camera on, rolling. Nothing happened at first. Then at exactly 2:33, the studio lights flickered on by themselves. Stage lights, spotlights. The big wheel lit up, and from the darkness above, the theme music began to play. Warped, slower than normal. The camera's display glitched, froze, and in that frozen frame, Lyle saw them, Section D, full. A full audience, men, women, children, dressed in clothing from different decades. 70s bell-bottoms, 80s windbreakers, 90s game show tees. But they weren't cheering. They weren't smiling. They were staring directly into the camera, mouths open, hands mid-clap, eyes hollow. Lyle dropped the camera, ran, quit his internship the next day. But before he left, he uploaded the clip to a private file server titled audience.stares.mp4. The link leaked. A few people watched it. Before it vanished, every single one reported the same thing. The night after watching it, they woke up at exactly 2:33 a.m. to the sound of applause coming from their hallway. Since then, CBS Security has unofficially banned crew from sitting in Section D alone. Contestants are quietly discouraged from choosing those seats during taping. If someone does, nothing happens. But if someone sits there twice, well. A 2019 guest named Victor Mendez returned to the show as a superfan. He'd attended once in 2006. He was seated in Section D, the exact same spot as his first visit. Halfway through the taping, he froze, stood up, walked to the center of the stage, and stared at the spinning wheel without blinking for 5 full minutes. He whispered one sentence before collapsing. "They've been clapping for me all along." He was never seen again. His name is no longer listed in the audience records, but in a pause frame of that episode, one that somehow still made it to air, you can see someone sitting next to him, Lyle Ferguson, who had been missing for 3 years. Studio 33 is still in use today, still taped live, still full of applause, but if you ever get a ticket to the show and your seat assignment says Section D, don't go. Don't sit there. Because those who take a seat in Section D may never truly leave. They just become part of the show, applauding, smiling, and waiting for you to come on down. Story 8, The Wrong Price. Every contestant on The Price Is Right wants to win, but how they win matters. Most rely on instinct. A lucky guess, a quick calculation, but not Trevor Leeds. Trevor didn't believe in chance. He believed in control. And on June 6, 2010, he used that control to win. What he didn't realize is that The Price Is Right has its own rules. And when you break them, you don't leave the studio. You stay. Trevor was a 32-year-old systems analyst from Denver, sharp, confident, and extremely online. He had spent 2 years studying every episode of the show, compiling retail prices, identifying repeat products, even coding a program that would give real-time guesses based on historical data. It was all stored on a tiny device strapped inside his watch, a prototype, hidden, silent. It buzzed gently with price suggestions based on items shown. He called it the Barker algorithm. Trevor didn't come to play. He came to break the game. Hand me on you one. And he did. He guessed the exact price of a home theater system to the dollar. Won his way to the showcase showdown with perfect bids. Spun a 1 on the wheel, and at the showcase, he delivered a final bid of $23,468. An oddly specific number, but it was right. Exactly right. Too right. The audience cheered wildly. Drew Carey smiled, but there was hesitation in his eyes. Even the announcer's voice shook a bit as he read the results. Backstage, someone whispered, "Check the inputs." Producers paused. The air shifted. Trevor grinned like a man who thought he beat the house. But the house had only just opened the door. Later that night, back at his hotel, Trevor opened the envelope containing his prize claim. Inside was a note. "Congratulations, Mr. Leeds. You've won something priceless. Your next game begins at midnight. Come on down." No signature, no branding, just a black wax seal on the back. At first, he thought it was a prank, until the TV turned on by itself. Static, then a shot of the studio. Empty. Literature waiting. Trevor blinked, and suddenly he wasn't in the hotel anymore. He was in the studio, alone. The set looked identical, but wrong. Colors washed out, stage lights flickering. Props, twisted. The showcase wheel now had teeth. The podiums pulsed like they were breathing. And worst of all, no crew, just one camera. And an audience of mannequins, seated, watching, silent. Each mannequin wore a name tag. Some names Trevor recognized, contestants from past years, winners who disappeared, fan favorites who left the show and were never seen again. A voice came over the speaker system, not Drew's, not Bob's, something else. You cheated, Trevor. You knew the price, but the price didn't know you. Trevor backed away. The lights snapped on. A single item appeared on the stage. A toaster. Nothing more. The voice spoke again. Guess the price, or stay forever. Trevor laughed nervously. $28.99. Silence. The toaster opened. Inside, a human tooth, still bleeding. Next item, a velvet rope. Trevor shook his head. What is this? The rope wrapped around his wrist on its own. Tight. Burning. Wrong again. Next, a name tag. His name, with the barcode burned off. Trevor screamed, ran toward the exit tunnel, but there were no doors. Only walls made of TV screens, each playing a different episode of The Price Is Right. Every one of them now showed him, but twisted, mouth sewn shut, eyes rolled back. Standing beside Drew Carey, forever clapping. He collapsed in the middle of the stage. A spotlight beamed down. One last bid. An object floated from the ceiling. A mirror. Trevor looked into it and saw the mannequin version of himself. Standing in section D, watching, clapping. A voice behind him whispered, "Now you know the price, but it's already been paid." When Trevor's body was found in his hotel room 3 days later, there was no sign of trauma. He looked peaceful, except for the smile carved into his cheeks, and the fact that his pupils were dollar signs. The watch device? Gone. But his phone had one final image on it, a screenshot from a camera app, a blurry photo of the Price Is Right stage. But the host was missing, and standing behind the podium was Trevor, mouth moving, but no sound. To this day, the staff won't talk about that episode, but rumor has it, the next time a contestant bids too perfectly, the producers subtly shift the numbers. They don't like the exact guesses anymore, because the show knows, the studio remembers. So if you're ever on The Price Is Right and you think you've cracked the game, just remember, there's a difference between knowing the price and knowing the cost. Story 9, Behind Door Number 3. Every game has rules. Every show has structure. But what happens when something slips through the rules? Something waiting behind the door no one picks? This is the story of Carly Monroe, a high school math teacher from Tulsa, Oklahoma, who should have gone home with a washer-dryer set. Instead, she opened a door that never appeared on the cue card and walked into a space between tapings, a backstage hallway that shouldn't exist. The game was Make a Deal. 3 doors, 3 potential prizes. Door 1, a trip to Cabo. Door 2, a new lawn tractor. Door 3, a mystery. The audience was buzzing. The lights danced across the stage. The music was punchy, loud. Carly was thrilled, bouncing on her heels in a sequined Tulsa Loves Bob shirt. But as the camera zoomed in, something changed. The lights dimmed slightly. A chill swept across the stage. And Carly, just for a moment, saw something behind door 3. It didn't look like a prize. It looked like a hallway. Unlit, deep, endless. Drew, Carrie smiling, asked the usual question. "All right, Carly, what door are you picking?" She paused. Something inside her pulsed, a curiosity she didn't recognize. She swallowed hard. 3, she said. The audience cheered. The curtain lifted, and the studio fell silent. Behind door 3 was no prize. No cruise, no vacuum, no fanfare. Just a narrow corridor lined with flickering fluorescent lights. No one moved. Not Drew, not the models, not even the cameras. Then Drew said stiffly, voice strained, You You can go ahead and claim your prize. Carly took a step forward, and the floor behind her vanished. There was no going back. The moment she crossed the threshold, the door closed, not with a game show click, with a slam that echoed like steel locking into stone. The hallway buzzed. A sign hung above her. Backstage, authorized contestants only. She turned. The door was gone. Now only 3 more doors stood at the end of the hall, each one unmarked, old, peeling paint and breathing. She heard it, the sound of inhalation from behind each one. Then over the intercom, "Choose again, Carly." The first door opened before she touched it. Inside a studio, but not the Price Is Right. The set looked the same, but everyone had no faces. Contestants, host, audience, all featureless, clapping soundlessly. She screamed and slammed the door. Door 2. She opened it slowly. This room was a dressing room. Hers, apparently her name on the mirror. But in the reflection, she saw herself aging, rapidly, skin shriveling, teeth loosening, hair turning white in seconds. In the reflection, she tried to scream, but outside the mirror, her mouth didn't move. She slammed the door shut. Door 3. The wood was warm, wet. It opened into an office, dusty, lit only by static from a television playing a rerun of a 1974 episode. Bob Barker was speaking to the camera, but then he turned, looked past the camera, looked at her and said, "Not everyone leaves with a prize, but everyone pays something." Carly stepped back. Behind her, the hallway had changed. The walls now lined with old contestant shirts, ripped, burned, stained. Each one still had a name tag. She saw hers, fresh, hanging from a rusted hook. Carly Monroe, contestant number 44,798. Footsteps echoed behind her. She ran, down the hallway, past the breathing doors, past walls that began whispering prices in reverse. 99.20 at Look You Should. She kept running until she saw it. A 4th door, hidden behind a curtain labeled "Do Not Air." She opened it and stepped onto a silent set. The Price Is Right stage, but gray, dust-covered, lifeless. No one in the audience, no one behind the podiums, except for one figure, herself, sitting in the first row, watching, smiling, and slowly clapping. Carly screamed, but no sound came out. The clapping grew louder. Soon a voice crackled from the overhead speaker. "Carly Monroe, please return to your seat. Your game is complete." The price was curiosity. She tried to run, but her feet moved without her permission. She walked to the seat beside her own double, Saturday, and began clapping too. That episode was never aired. The footage corrupted. CBS listed the tape as technical error and recorded a replacement the next day. But some crew remember the original taping. They say Drew was visibly shaken after Carly disappeared. Said her name wasn't even on the call sheet. Security footage from the studio showed her walking behind door 3 and never coming out. Even stranger, door 3 wasn't built yet. Construction on that set piece was scheduled for 2 days later. To this day, some contestants report seeing a shadow when the game comes to the Choose a Door segment. If they pick door 3, the crew gets nervous. There's a brief pause backstage, and then the director always calls, "Cut, reset, let's do that, one more time." They never air the first take, just in case. So if you're ever a contestant on The Price Is Right, and you're asked to pick a door, and your gut tells you 3, ask yourself, are you choosing the prize, or is the prize choosing you? Because some doors don't lead to the showcase. Some doors never close behind you. This has been Darkverse. I'm Isaac Nightshade. Next time someone says behind door number 3, don't open it, just don't. Let me know when you're ready for story 10. Lights, camera, possession. This one is about a contestant who touches the host's microphone and starts speaking in voices that aren't their own. Story 10. Lights, camera, possession. There's a superstition in old television studios, a quiet one, never written down, passed only from veteran to rookie with a nervous laugh. Don't touch the host's mic. Not because it's sacred, not because of germs, because sometimes if you listen closely, the mic remembers. It remembers every voice it's ever broadcast. And one day, it might decide to speak back. In 2011, The Price Is Right welcomed its usual flood of excited contestants. Among them was a 29-year-old amateur comedian named Harper Day. Bubbly, loud, dressed in a glittery red top and wearing a giant foam $sign hat. She had energy, she had jokes, and she had absolutely no idea she was about to become a mouthpiece for the dead. Harper was called to come on down just 8 minutes into the show. She bid confidently, won a set of cookware. The audience loved her. She made it to the game stage where she met Drew Carey and was asked to guess prices for a kitchen appliance combo. But when she stepped up, she accidentally brushed against the host's podium mic. It shouldn't have mattered, but the moment her fingers touched the chrome base, the mic buzzed. Not electrically, audibly, a low, static hum, like a whisper trapped under ice. She pulled her hand back, but her smile was different now. Drew asked her how she felt. She tilted her head and said in a low, unfamiliar tone, "The price is wrong." The crowd laughed, but Drew froze. That line wasn't on the cue card, and it wasn't a joke. It was flat, mechanical, like someone reading from memory. He moved on, but Harper didn't laugh again. She completed her game in silence, won a blender, and returned to the contestant podium. But throughout the rest of the show, she began mimicking other contestants' voices. Exactly. Perfectly. A woman with a Boston accent said, "I'll say $800. 10 seconds later, Harper whispered the same line, with the same inflection, same tone. Then she did it again, and again, until she wasn't whispering contestant voices anymore. She was reciting names, past contestants, some who had been dead for years. The crew noticed. A producer pulled Drew aside during a commercial break. "She's doing something weird. She keeps saying names, old ones." "What names?" "Travis Mahoney, Elaine Morgan, Nancy Bellevue." Drew's face went pale. Those weren't random. Those were contestants who had been involved in incidents. One vanished. One collapsed on air. One had walked into door number 3. When the show returned from break, Harper was gone. She wasn't on her mark. The podium beside her was empty. The camera panned wide. She wasn't in the crowd, not backstage. Then someone noticed her on the main stage, standing where Drew had stood earlier. She held the mic with both hands, and she was speaking, but the voice wasn't hers. The footage, which was never aired, showed Harper delivering a monologue of price calls, word for word, from an episode in 1983. Same inflection, same pacing, same prizes. She recited bids from dead contestants, called out items that hadn't been used in decades, and when a producer tried to remove her from the stage, she turned to him and whispered, "You didn't spay or neuter your regrets," and smiled. They eventually pulled her off stage. She didn't resist, but she didn't speak again either, not in her voice. At the hospital, doctors ran every test they could. Physically, she was fine, but mentally, she wouldn't answer to her own name. She only responded when someone called her Bob. A retired sound technician came forward weeks later after hearing what had happened. He said there had been rumors, long before Drew took over, that Bob Barker's mic was hot even when powered down, that it sometimes recorded whispers in an empty studio, that at night, if you put on the headphones and dialed in the right channel, You could hear bidding from shows that had never aired, from contestants no one remembered. They destroyed the mic after Harper's incident, but the recordings persisted. One file labeled Open Channel 1111 contains 4 hours of faint, distorted audio. In it, you can hear dozens of voices calling out dollar amounts. Then one voice breaks through, "Mic check, 1, 2, 3. I never left the stage." As for Harper, she was released after 6 months, moved back to Tulsa, lives quietly now. But every year on June 14th, the anniversary of the taping, she posts the same message on social media. "Do not touch the mic. The stage hears you, and it answers." To this day, the mic at the host's podium is checked twice before taping, tested, scanned. They don't allow contestants near it anymore. But sometime, when a host jokes or stutters a word, it's not a mistake. It's a signal. So if you ever find yourself near that silver stem and you hear static, don't listen. Don't respond. Because that voice, it may sound familiar, but it doesn't belong to anyone living. Story 11. The Price Is Eternal. His name was Colin Mercer, a field producer for an online documentary series called Myths of the Medium. He'd covered haunted radio stations, lost pilots, cursed sitcoms. He wasn't scared of stories. He was fueled by them. And in 2022, his next project was supposed to be about nostalgia. Game shows that raised us. But when he got to The Price Is Right, something changed. He found a shadow inside the studio's timeline. Missing tapes, contestants, that were quietly erased from history. And one note scribbled in the corner of a photocopied memo from 1986. "Do not mention the tapes in storage B9. Studio 33 owns the names." That's when Colin stopped filming the documentary and started investigating a haunting. It began with a call to a retired CBS archivist. Colin asked about lost episodes. The archivist paused, then said, "It's not that the tapes are gone. It's that the network stopped watching them." He mentioned a box in the basement of the studio, unlogged, unmarked. Just one word written on it, "Spin." Colin tracked it down. In a forgotten part of the building, behind stacked set pieces and broken lights, was a metal shelf. On it, one black VHS tape. No label, just a number, 0000, and a sticky note, "Do not air, do not view, do not erase." So of course, Colin watched it. The footage began like any normal episode. Audience cheering, a smiling host, the signature phrase, "Come on down," but the names were wrong. They weren't names, they were dates. October 9th, 1983, "Come on down." July 12th, 1995, "Come on down," and people walked out of the crowd with no faces, just skin. Colin fast-forwarded. At the showcase showdown, the wheel was spinning, and spinning, and spinning. No one touched it. It never stopped. Instead, the numbers began changing, from dollars to names. Each section of the wheel displayed the name of a past contestant, some winners, some not. Then, in the final few, frames, it displayed his name, Colin Mercer. He turned off the tape, but the TV stayed on, and in the screen, Colin saw the reflection of a studio behind him. Not his apartment. Studio 33. Empty. Literature waiting. That night, Colin woke up at 2:22 a.m. The sound of clapping echoed through his apartment. Software. Measured, and from the hallway. He got out of bed, phone camera on, whispering into the lens, "If I disappear, the tape is real." But when he passed by his mirror, he saw something that shattered his breath. He wasn't alone. In the reflection behind him stood the Plinko board, the showcase podium, the spinning wheel, and an audience full of shadows. The next morning, he returned to the studio. This time, he didn't bring his crew, just the tape. He walked through the empty halls until he reached the stage. Everything was powered down, but as he stepped onto the floor, the lights snapped on. Music played, and a voice. "Not Drew, not Bob," whispered from above. "Welcome back, Colin. Your segment is ready." A podium rose from the floor, already marked with his name. The crowd? Still mannequins. But this time, they were clapping, not with hands, with teeth. He tried to leave, but the door had vanished, and then he saw the camera. Ancient, rusting, red light on. He looked into the lens, and his own voice, from the tape, played over the speakers. "If I disappear, the tape is real." Then he felt the floor vibrate. The wheel began to spin. Faster, faster, not toward a dollar amount, but toward a door. One final, terrible door, labeled with a glowing red neon sign, Eternal Showcase. He ran. The set twisted, reshaped itself. Walls melted into screens. Each showed episodes that never aired. Each had him standing in the background, clapping, smiling, bidding again and again. He finally reached the neon door, opened it, and found himself backstage. Lights off, tape in hand, alone. The studio was dark again. He stumbled out. The next day, CBS found the old tape left at the front gate. Attached was a note. "If this airs, everyone spins." They locked it in storage. Again. But something had changed. For weeks afterward, the cameras in Studio 33 would activate at night, on their own. Always recording, always showing the empty stage. Until one morning, a new clip appeared in the system's hard drive. No one uploaded it. It showed a man standing at the podium. Name tag Colin, smiling, spinning, alone. Teed's Colin was never seen again, but in the background of some reruns, sharp-eyed viewers report seeing an extra contestant. Never speaks, never bids, just stands and smiles. So if you ever hear of a lost episode, a forgotten tape, a set that was locked for a reason, don't watch it, because the studio's still rolling. And the next contestant might be you. This has been Dark Verse. I'm Isaac Nightshade, and this concludes our special series, The Price Is Fright. Remember, on this show, there's only one real rule. The house always spins, and the price is eternal.